Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating and honestly super important corner of contract law. We're going to be looking at Section 68 of the Indian Contract Act. Now, this is a rule that gets right to the heart of a big question. How do we balance fairness and protecting those who are most vulnerable? So let's kick things off with a scenario that really paints a picture. Imagine this. A doctor provides life-saving care to a minor who's unconscious. Now, that minor, well, they legally can't agree to a contract, right? They're incapable of giving consent. So what happens? Does the doctor just not get paid for their work? It seems totally unfair, doesn't it? Well, the law actually has a really smart and specific answer for situations just like this, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We'll start by digging into the core legal problem itself. Then we'll look at Section 68, which is the big solution. After that, we'll break down what you actually need for a valid claim, check out some huge landmark cases to see it in action, and then we'll pull it all together for a quick exam review. Sound good? All right, let's get into it. First up, we need to figure out where our doctor's dilemma even fits in the legal world. I mean, there was no handshake, no signed paper, no agreement at all. So it's not a regular contract. The law actually has this really special category for situations like this, and it's called a quasi-contract. And its whole purpose? To make sure things are fair. Yeah, so the thing to really get your head around here is that a quasi-contract isn't a real contract. It's not something people agree to. Think of it more as a legal tool, an obligation that a court steps in and creates. And it all boils down to one key idea: preventing something called unjust enrichment. It's a fancy term, but it basically just means the law won't let someone get a huge benefit for free, especially when it costs someone else. So, how does the law actually fix this unjust enrichment problem we've been talking about, in our doctor scenario? Well, the answer is tucked away in a very specific rule that was made for this exact kind of situation. And that, my friends, is where Section 68 of the Indian Contract Act makes its grand entrance. Okay, so this is the heart of it right here. Section 68 basically says that if you supply necessaries, and we'll talk more about what that means in a second, to someone who can't legally make a contract, like a minor or someone of unsound mind, you are entitled to get paid back. But, and this is a huge but, you can only get that money from their property or their estate, not from them personally. Right, so it's not a free-for-all. You can't just provide something to a minor and expect to get paid automatically. The law is really specific about this. There's a clear checklist of things that have to be true for a claim under Section 68 to actually work. Let's break down exactly what a court is going to be looking for. And here they are, the 4 essential tests. It's actually pretty straightforward when you lay it out. Number 1, the person you helped has to be legally incapable of making a contract. Simple enough. Number 2, the stuff you supplied has to be considered necessaries. 3, those necessaries have to actually fit their lifestyle, their condition in life. And finally, and this is so important, you're going after their property for payment, not them personally. Okay, let's pause and really dig into this word necessaries. This is a huge part of Section 68, and it's not as simple as you might think. We're not just talking about, bread and water, the absolute bare essentials. It's a much more flexible idea. It means whatever is essential for that specific person to live a reasonable life. And what's reasonable totally depends on their social status and their unique situation. This slide really helps make it click, doesn't it? When you see them side by side. On one hand, you've got things like basic education, life-saving medical care, a roof over your head, or even hiring a lawyer to protect your property. Courts usually see those as necessaries. But then look at the other side. A fancy sports car, expensive jewelry, or racing horse? Yeah, no way. Those are clearly luxuries. And if you sell those to a minor, you're not getting your money back through Section 68. All right, so we've got the theory down. But let's be real, the law doesn't live in a textbook. It comes alive in actual court cases. To really get a feel for how these rules play out, we have to look at how judges have handled them in real life. So let's dive into a few landmark cases that really define how we think about Section 68. First up, a classic, Nash v. Inman. Every law student learns this one. The story is, a tailor sold a whole bunch of fancy waistcoats, 11 of them, to a Cambridge student. But here's the kicker. The student already had a wardrobe full of clothes. The court came up with this brilliant 2-part test. It's not enough that the goods are suitable for their status. The supplier also has to prove the minor actually needed them right then and there. The tailor couldn't prove the student needed those waistcoats, so he was out of luck. He couldn't get his money back. And this quote from the judge in that case just sums it up perfectly. He says, the law isn't pretending a contract exists. Instead, the law implies an obligation to pay back for the necessaries. That is the whole idea of a quasi-contract in a nutshell. It's a clever legal tool, almost like a fiction the law creates, just to make sure the result is fair. Okay, moving on to another big case, Chappel v. Cooper. This one is super important because it shows us that necessaries aren't just things you can touch, like clothes or food. In this case, an undertaker provided a funeral for the husband of a minor widow. The court had to decide, is a funeral a necessary? And they said, yes, absolutely. A decent burial was considered a necessary service. So this case really broadened the whole concept to include essential services, not just goods. And let's bring it home with a major Indian landmark case, Indra Bahadur Singh v. Dilraj Kuar. This one is cool because it deals with money itself. Someone lent money to a minor, but it was for a very specific reason, to pay lawyers to defend the minor's property. The court looked past the money and focused on the purpose. Since the loan was for a necessary service, protecting the minor's assets, the court treated the loan itself as a necessary. This meant the lender could get their money back, but again, only from the minor's property. Okay, that was a lot, I know. We've gone through the theory, we've seen how it works in real cases, so now let's pull all these threads together and boil it down into a super clear summary. This is the stuff you'll definitely want to have locked in for any exam. This flowchart is a great way to visualize the whole process from start to finish. You start with someone who can't legally make a contract. Then they get supplied with necessaries that fit their life. That supply creates a valid claim for reimbursement. And the final, critical step, the payment comes from their property only. It's a clean, logical path. And this table, honestly, if you remember one thing, make it this. The difference between a normal contract and a Section 68 quasi-contract is night and day. With a regular contract, you are on the hook, personally. But with Section 68, the person themselves is protected. They are not personally liable. The claim can only ever be against their property. That's a massive fundamental layer of protection the law provides. So for your revision notes, here's the quick and dirty summary. 1, it's all about stopping unjust enrichment. 2, it is not a real contract. It's an obligation created by law. 3, it's for minors and people of unsound mind. 4, necessaries is a relative term. It depends on status and need. 5, the supplier has to prove their case. And 6 and 7, which are really two sides of the same coin, liability is limited to the person's property, meaning there is absolutely no personal liability. Got it? So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Isn't it incredible how Section 68 strikes this perfect balance? On one hand, it fiercely protects vulnerable people from being trapped in deals they don't understand. But on the other, it makes sure that those who genuinely step in to help them are treated fairly and don't end up out of pocket. It's a really elegant solution. As you keep going with your studies, keep an eye out for this theme of balancing, because you'll see it pop up all over contract law. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.